Hey guys, I'm Jackson Rollo, the host of the One and Done podcast. We're super excited to release season 3, and in season 3, we're going to be rolling out a new theme for the podcast. So over the first 2 years, our theme has been interviewing younger, successful people in any white-collar business, really just trying to teach our college students and anybody out there trying to figure out what they want to do at a young age, what businesses exist. With season 3, we're taking it a level deeper, and we're going to be interviewing people who are either co-founders or C-level executives at a very young age. So going from what they're doing in business to really showing that pinnacle of success, what it looks like to run a company, to found a company, the struggles of an entrepreneur, and what it looks like to grow a business and to lead people. We're super excited, and we want to welcome you to season 3 of the One and Done podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back into season 3, episode number 7 of the One and Done podcast. We are here in the brand new studio in Rollo Insurance office, our main sponsor. Today joined by a good buddy of mine. We go back, we were talking about 6-7 years now. We used to not be thinking about business. We used to probably just be thinking about how much time we could spend in the rec playing basketball. But Brandon Compean, he's the founder of Texas Brand. Man, excited to have you on the show. Excited to get to catch up.
Thank you, Jackson. Excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, man. So, it's fun. This is the cool thing about going to A&M, right? I think they just announced there's 80,000 kids at A&M right now. So basically every other person you run into graduated from A&M. You do have some kind of connection, but me and Brandon actually overlapped at A&M. Like I said, we used to play basketball at the rec, I don't know, probably every day of the week and, get into fights and all the stuff you do as, college guys who are out there living the dream playing rec league basketball. But no, Brandon was really good at that, and I know that you're doing a really good job with Texas Brand. So if you wouldn't mind, catch the listeners up on, kind of where you've been since college and then kind of what you're doing right now.
Thank you, Jackson. Yes, so graduated Texas A&M in 2018, worked for an engineering consulting company, worked in all 50 states, Canada, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. I was managing 7-Eleven accounts, so building gas stations all over the place. Got some really good experience, built a really strong network. Shortly after finishing that in 2020, 7-Eleven was going to be going in-house to have their construction department handle all of their new builds. And I worked for a small general / big subcontractor in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that did concrete and underground utilities. And so I did that for a few months, strengthened the network a little bit more. And I realized that every big entrepreneur that I talked to always had the biggest regret of not starting sooner. My end goal was always to have my own business. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to start somewhere and see where it takes me. So started the company now, or I think it was June of 2020. So we're officially now about four years in. 4 years.
Right in the middle of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, man. Well, before we talk about that, because that's wild, because it's funny, because I started as director of sales for Rollo Insurance in January of 2020, which is like awesome, right? Like me being 20 years younger than everybody, I'm now the boss of, and then COVID happens and everything's shut down, and I'm teaching guys how to use webinar. It was interesting, so I'm sure it was crazy for you too. But talk to me about this. So 7-Eleven, that's cool, man. That's a big time project, and you, like you mentioned, you get to work on them all over the place. One of the things I know talking to you is you use school in the correct way, in my opinion. I didn't know this about you at the time, but you mentioned, internships you took all along the way. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, our audience is made up of college students trying to figure out what they want to do. Can you talk about like how those internships strengthen your desire to get into construction versus making you think, hey, I want to go into something else?
Absolutely. So I think the most important part of going to college is to at least have an idea of what you kind of like, and then to tie that, look up markets and look up things that are thriving, that have a need, that have a high demand. Construction science at Texas A&M is, I think, like ranked number 1 in the country for what they say there. But unarguably, I mean, they have like a 98% higher rate in average salary at the time of like $68,000. I think it's gone up a few $1,000s now, but very, very successful. So I had an aunt that was a civil engineer, and I always wanted to do what she wanted, what she was doing. She made good money, had a pretty decent-ish schedule, and it always sounded so cool. So I was like, well, I want to do that. So I started my freshman year as a civil engineer, and then shortly after a few math classes, I realized that I could, I met a friend playing basketball actually that was a construction science major. And he's like, dude, why don't you look into that? You could maybe get the same job. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of cool. So instead of being an okay guy
Same
in
job,
civil
less
engineering,
math.
yeah, absolutely. And so I
Yeah.
was like, instead of being an okay guy in civil engineer, I could be like a rock star in construction science. And so getting into the program got a little bit harder, but at the time they were still trying to grow construction science. So I got in there, and it was really good. Quickly established, good relationships with the professors, with a lot of my peers, and was able to again, yeah, get some really good internships to set me up to, you know, be successful, learn what I liked, what I didn't like, and yeah, go from there.
As an entrepreneur now, what do you um what what are you looking for? Like what do you take the most from your time in college now that you're like looking for employees and working with other people? Like from your time in college, what is the most useful skill that you think you developed while at Texas A&M?
I think just knowing how to network, knowing how to learn from other people. One of my favorite professors, my senior year in construction science, said, here you're going to learn, how to do things by the book. Once you get out, you're going to learn to do things, in real life, obviously, and then somewhere in between there, you can monetize that. And he said, but the most important thing is going to be people. Meet as many people as you can. If you meet one new person every single day, it's huge. He said, every person you meet knows something you don't. So again, if you meet a new person every single day and you learn something new, huge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think probably one of the things I wish I did a better job of at A&M was being more involved. I think pretty much my networking consisted of the time we spent at the rec and all the guys I got to know there. Because to me, I was there on a mission, right? I wanted to get a degree, I wanted to get the certain GPA, and I wanted to get into law school. And now looking back, I think I wish I would have taken a little bit of broader picture of what college is, which I think you defined really well earlier. And it's kind of what we push here on the One and Done podcast, which is it's a great time for you to learn how to grow up, learn how to network, and then, like you said, learn the by the book material that you need to know. Because when you get into the real world, it is going to be somewhere between that and the reality of what makes you money, actually. That in a mixture of those two, life is about balance, but it's a balance of those two is what's going to make you the most successful. And so I think that's probably, if I could go back to one thing I would look at changing, is just being more involved, because then I would know more people now, which, your network is your net worth. And so you have to know more people if you want to, if you want to be able to get in bigger doors. So when I think about networking, right, and we kind of spin it back into you and your story, you mentioned in 2020 you started Texas Brand, which I want to hear how that started, because you mentioned earlier, like, well, I had a lot of connections from the things I'd done for the last 4 or 5 years, intern all the way through working for these couple companies. How did that help you? And then when you launched Texas Brand, what was kind of the vision and the foundation for your company?
So I knew from the beginning, right? I'm really good with people. I'm really good with people. Again, I established a strong network, and after working for that subcontracting company, I think there was 20 crews that I had under me, and all of them I had a really good relationship with the boss of every single crew. And so COVID hits.
Just for reference, how many people is that?
So
How many
each
people
crew
is
had
that?
each crew had about 7 or 8 people, and there was about 20 of them, so about 140 people. About
Wow.
140 people, and yeah, I always made it a point, because a lot of the superintendents were, like they go check on the job, they'd go sit in their truck, or they'd go elsewhere, go eat lunch and just do their thing. I had a different approach. I would go out there and sometimes sit down and eat lunch, out in the job site with the crew or whatever, and talk about them, get to know them a little bit more on a personal level. and that really helped me establish a good relationship with them. So whenever I start the business, I knew that I wanted to continue that culture. I wanted to continue having good relationships with all my employees, make sure they're comfortable with me, with telling me things and not being afraid to speak up if they have an issue, so we could have a good flow through every project, and that's helped a ton. There's a lot of projects that don't go the way we want them to, but I'll ask them to do something for me, and I don't think they've ever said no. But vice versa, we will have some things going on. They'll be like, hey man, my kid is sick, or my wife is pregnant, and whatever, and I can't make it today, or et cetera. And I'm always super lenient on a lot of things, so long as it's obviously not abused. But yeah, getting
Yeah.
that culture started, I think, was the most important.
Yeah, it's funny because businesses are built around people, and people working together. That's built around trust, right? And I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Carrot Principle, and it's funny because one of the things it mentioned really early on within leadership is the trust between a leader and the people below them. And I'm sure you can talk to this with 140 people who were below you at one point, right? How you built that trust with them. But basically, what it said was, if you are a leader and you want to get things done, well, you're going to need people to make that happen. And if you want to motivate and move those people, they have to trust you. And if they never see you, they can't trust you, right? So when you were talking about the superintendent sitting in their truck, it reminded me of that because they told a story of a CEO, and they're like, man, we've never seen him. He's always in a meeting, right? He goes up to his office and he comes down, and it's like you have to avoid that temptation, I think, sometimes, because we are busy, right? When you run a company or you're a leader, you are busy. But that doesn't give you an excuse not to go out and know what's going on and for your people to know you. Because if you know them and they know you, they'll trust you. And it's at that moment you can build the momentum you need to really build something special. And I think that's the beginning of culture, right?
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about Texas Brand now. Now you have your own company. You're kind of back to a solo entrepreneur for right now, right, as you're building this thing up. Tell me about what you're doing and what your vision is for Texas Brand.
Yeah, so going into this year, we got our first government contract. We're doing some work at the military base here in Fort Worth, and that was a sector I kind of been trying to push now for a while. It's hard to get into, but once you're in it, it's amazing. It is a little slow, but it's good. Competition, you don't have as much competition. The contracts are good. Sometimes they keep you busy for a long period of time. So ideally, continue growing the company in that direction, maybe tie it to a little bit more commercial. We have some work that we're bidding up in Oklahoma. Had some meetings out there the last few weeks. So yeah, if I can grow it a little bit more, maybe one day sell it and do something else. Now finishing the MBA at SMU, it gives me the broadness to be able to work in something else. And I'm making it sound all fun. Owning a company and being an entrepreneur is amazing. I will never not be an entrepreneur and have at least a few sources of income. The average millionaire in U.S., or I think it was in U.S. I think it was around the world. Might be around the world. Has an average of 7 sources of income. So
I believe it. You got to diversify, right?
absolutely.
It's interesting to me. You went the exact direction I was going to take this, which is, we talk about the good stuff, but there are challenges to being on the top and running a business and being an entrepreneur. So let's talk about those a little bit. Like, what's one of the biggest challenges you've faced so far?
I get asked this question all the time, and it's number one, very, very high on my list. It makes me kind of upset to think about, but it's important, and especially if you want to start your own business and you're young and you don't know much. I think, was it our second year, it wasn't a crazy big project, $30,000-$40,000. But we go through it. I had a contract in place, but I was very just lenient on it. I was like, I trust people are good. It's going to be okay. So we get this work done. I didn't ask for a deposit or anything up front. I funded all of it. And once we finish it, the homeowner who had just moved to Texas bought a house and was doing all these crazy remodels. We do a big fancy driveway for him, and once he he's done, he says, you know what, we don't like it. And he's like, okay, well, it's exactly kind of what you picked. Is there anything we can fix? Whatever. He's like, no, I don't like it, and I'm not going to pay for it. And so I was like, oh. So I called some friends, get some legal advice, and they're like, all right, well, you know, you put a lien on his house, and you go from there. So long story short, it turns into a big lawsuit. So here I am putting a lien on his house. This guy turns out to be super, super financially successful. He owns a helicopter company, a lot of pharmacies, and et cetera. So he has, you know, a huge legal team. I had a pretty good attorney, which was not cheap, but then it just turns into a big legal battle. And it was something that I should have been a little bit more informed on, had a better contract in place, make sure they signed it, make sure everything along the way was a little bit better documented. But you know, the case went on for about 7-8 months. And the guy essentially just kind of kept dragging it out because he knew that I would eventually run out of money to fight the case. And you know, the stress and all that tied to it, I was like, you know what, he's going to keep delaying it. I'm going to continue losing money. I'm just going to let this go. We're going to chalk this one up to the game. Lesson learned. You know, tweaked my contract. I went through and made sure had different conversations. Now we ask for a deposit up front if it's more than $5,000. So that doesn't happen again. And it was good. You know, I try to look at things in a positive way for everything that goes on. That doesn't work in my favor. So I was like, you know what? I'm young. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I lost a decent amount of money, but you know, I don't have a family depending on me. You know, my family's not starving. Yeah. It's okay. I'm glad it happened now on a contract that's $50,000 when, you know, my family and kids are not depending on me to provide for them, instead of it happening whenever I'm in a $2 million contract, and now I'm out some serious money.
Yeah, you know, that's a really good point, man. I think that I love your perspective there, and I think that applies to everything whenever it comes to like picking a career, whenever it comes to anything in life. I got to hear a guy recently, Admiral William McCraven. Unfortunately, he went to Texas, and he used to be I can't remember what it was, you know, chancellor or something at Texas. That was the only negative about this guy, but Navy SEAL, like on the team that went in and handled Osama bin Laden, like really decorated soldier, right? Got to hear him speak, and he talked about when they were at SEAL training, they did these things. Basically, he called them sugar cookies, and he said basically it was like an officer would look at these trainees and basically be like, "Hey, sugar cookie," or whatever, and basically they would have to go jump in the water and then roll around in the sand until they had sand literally all over them, and and he basically said, "Look, you know what the lesson of the sugar cookie is?" He said, there was no reason they did it to us. He's like, just because sometimes they wanted to. Like sometimes they looked at you and just like, you know what? Like, go do a sugar cookie, right? He said the lesson in that is life's not always fair. Get over it. And I think a lot of times when things approach us in a negative way, society tells you, man, bow up, fight against it. And sometimes you need to, right? Like what you did with the legal battle, like you should have done that. But then to overcome that and say, you know what, I'm going to take a positive lesson out of this because of where I'm at in my life and things like that. I think that that's the right approach to take, because I think sometimes life's not going to be fair. And you got to decide right now, are you going to be the kind of person that wallows in misery and just complains and like, woe is me about it? Or are you going to say, you know what, here's what I learned. Here's how it's never going to happen again. And here's how I'm going to get better because of it. I mean, the glass half full or the glass half empty kind of person, those people exist. I don't know a lot of successful people that are pessimistic in everything they do. Realistic, but not pessimistic. So
absolutely. And that, you know, here's a quote that I live by every day, and I think it ties to everyone, no matter how old, how young, college, high school, whatever. You worry about what you can control, and if you can't, then you don't. You know, and I, at the time I couldn't control a lot of those things. So worrying about it, being upset about it wasn't going to change the outcome. You roll with the punches and you move on.
Absolutely. You have to. So let me ask you this. What has been a big, I know when you were talking about like a big change in your strategy, right? What are you, 28? I think.
Sure. Yeah. Turn 29 in 2 weeks. Yeah.
There you go. All right, man. Well, happy early birthday. Yeah, so I'm
Thanks, man.
27, right? So we're both younger guys, and we've had to like take our licks early on in the game. I know for you, one of the things you mentioned, like a change in strategy, is you had to become more stern. I think is the word you used. Like the older you
That's right.
get.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Like what led to that? Because it's funny because I have a little bit of the same experience of you can't be everyone's best friend all the time. There's a really weird balance there. But talk to me like why is stern the thing that you feel like has changed in you?
It is a hard balance. And yes, starting up front, like I'm really good with people. I like to be charismatic. I like to make connections with all my workers or whatever. But very quickly, then it started with me being this nice, and then they would, push to get me to do a little bit more, and then I look back and I was being way too nice. And now they're kind of abusing it a little bit. Like, hey, dude, you bought us lunch. We wanted, you bought us Chicken Express last week. You bought us Chick-fil-A. Now we want something a little bit better. And I kept pushing and pushing it. And so I was like, you know what, this has to change. And not only that, but I think just telling people that they're doing something not the way they're supposed to be doing it or something or whatever. When you're young, you get a little bit scared. You get a little bit intimidated to say something. And the older I get, getting burned a time or two, like, oh, that job, maybe we could have done a little bit better if I would have said something, if I would have spoken up. Um, and so I mean, it's probably the same way for you. If you were, a young gun in insurance, and there's a guy that's been doing it for 25 years, and you're like, hey, dude, I think you should probably do this a little bit, differently. And he's like, no, dude, I've been doing this for 25 years. Like, yeah, but if I'm steering the ship, this is the way we're going to do things, and work with me. And of course, not do in a bad way, but have a communication with all your employees. So yeah, definitely now. I mean, having
Yeah.
some good experience under my belt, I'm not afraid. I'll go up and tell my guys like, no, dude, we're gonna do it this way. Like, I think this is what we're gonna do it. Or if they have a set way that they do things, okay, let's talk about it. Why that way? And between my way, let's maybe find a middle ground that works for both of us, and go from there. But that applies to negotiation. That applies to um, yeah, I guess just talking to customers. Sometimes they'll be like, before I used to be like, yeah, we'll do it, of course, exactly the way you want it. Now I'll be like, we're not going to do that. I don't think that's a good idea. Um, either I advise this
Yeah.
or
Have to.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, here's the thing. People, I think the word that I think about that like is something I'm still working on actively right now is accountability. And it's funny because every book I read, there are like across the spectrum of topics, right? Like how to make your employees more motivated, like leading with a positive look, like outlook, all these things. But every single one of those books talks about accountability. Sometimes we associate like accountability and being stern and hey, no, this is how we have to do it, and here's why. We associate that with like being mean or negative, but the reality is that's not mean or negative. That is holding people accountable, and the right kind of people, the people you want in your company, the people you want as clients. They appreciate accountability. Like I know you, I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked about this, but I'm assuming you appreciate accountability. I know I do. I like getting better, and you have to be accountable. And sometimes you have to say, yeah, I did that wrong. I shouldn't have done that, right? I got to fix this and get better.
Yeah.
But when you don't have those accountability metrics, the only way you feel like you can be successful is by giving, giving, giving. And the reality is there's a balance to everything in life, and there's a balance to being too rigid to where you can't be successful, and it stifles innovation, but also being so willing to give that it stifles the ability to grow and process things out and hold people accountable. And you got to balance those two things. It's hard, and I think that's one of the things that, like, if I'm we're speaking to our audience here of college students, figure that balance out now, right? Like, get in things in college, do internships that you aren't just doing paperwork all day. Do things where you're going to have to learn how to use your mind, negotiate, and find mentors who can teach you this, because you're going to only learn these lessons through going through them yourself, right? There's some
Absolutely.
lessons that you can only learn
Yeah.
that way, and I believe this is one of those lessons.
Right. I agree. I don't know. Again, advise young entrepreneurs to get started. Don't be scared. Take risks. You're young. You got time,
Yep.
in your favor. I was reading a quote
Yep.
a few weeks ago, and it asked Warren Buffett. He's a billionaire in money, but they asked, if you could be 20, 5 years old and have the world ahead of you, or be in the position you are now, knowing the way things panned out. He said, honestly, I would switch it all the way around. I would love to be young again, to have, to be a billionaire in time. Time, it flies by. This, Jackson. We've been out of college now. Feels like, we were playing basketball at the rec yesterday.
We're old now.
A few days ago.
Did you know that?
Now we're old. Yeah, we're old, man. I played two.
Man, I went
into
played
2 or 3 games, man. My back starts hurting.
I know. I went into a class the other day. I was like, hey, I'm 26. Like, how many of you think that's old? Like 90% of them were like, I think that's old. Like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. So, we're time goes fast, and I love that. Like a billionaire in time. Use it wisely. And same thing we tell the listeners every episode here at One and Done. Use your time in college wisely. Find internships that you think you're going to be interested in that career field. Test them, push them to the limits, and ultimately, at the end of the day, you say take risk. I'm going to pair that with be a problem solver, because I think most people, if you're comfortable and you're not taking risk, you're not solving problems, and guess what? You can go get a really nice job doing that in 8 to 4, and that's for a lot of people. But if you want to be a difference maker, you have to be willing to identify problems, come up with solutions, because that's the hard part. Everybody can see a problem, but not everybody can solve something. Find the solution and take risks to get better. If you're doing that, you are going to attract the right people around you in your life, and you're going to be successful for it. So, Brandon, man, hey, thank you so much for joining the One and Done podcast. Best of luck to you guys in Texas. Brand, I can't wait to stay in touch, man, and maybe we'll get back out there and hoop one day. Not too many games, 2 or 3 max. So.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you for having me.